Most people don't start with supplements, they turn to them after everything else stops working. And by the time they get there, it's usually not out of curiosity, it's out of frustration, because before that point they've already tried to fix the problem on their own. They've made changes. They've followed advice. They've put in effort. And for a while it often feels like progress is possible. But then something shifts. Results slow down. Energy drops. And the same strategies that once worked start losing impact. That's when people begin looking for something more. But to understand why supplements even enter the picture, you have to look at what happens before that. Most people start with the basics. They try to eat better. They reduce portions, cut out certain foods, avoid sugar or processed meals. This is usually the first step. And in many cases it works, at least in the beginning, because any structured change creates a difference. The body responds. Weight might drop. Energy might improve slightly. That early progress builds confidence. So the next step is usually adding more control. People begin tracking what they eat. Calories, macros, meal timing. They try to optimize everything. And again, this can work for a while, because it increases awareness and consistency. But over time it also becomes harder to maintain. It requires constant attention. And small deviations start to feel like setbacks. So when progress slows, the reaction is often to increase effort. Eat less. Be stricter. Remove more foods. This is where things start to shift, because now the approach becomes more restrictive. And while restriction can create short-term results, it also triggers adaptation. The body begins to conserve energy, metabolism becomes more efficient, and the gap between effort and results starts to shrink. At this point, many people turn to exercise. They increase activity levels, add workouts, try new routines, push intensity. And again, this can create temporary progress. But just like with diet, the body adapts. Energy expenditure adjusts. Recovery becomes more important. And without proper balance, fatigue starts to build. Now you have a situation where both sides of the equation are under pressure. Lower intake, higher output. And for a while that might work. But it's difficult to sustain, because the system is being pushed, not supported. This is where frustration begins to accumulate. Because from the outside it looks like everything is being done correctly. Better food, more movement, more discipline. But internally the body is adjusting. It's becoming more conservative, less responsive. And that's not always obvious. What people feel instead are the symptoms. Low energy during the day. Cravings that are harder to control. Weight that stops moving. Motivation that becomes inconsistent. So naturally they look for solutions. They try different diets. Low carb, intermittent fasting, meal replacements. Each one offers a new structure. A new approach. And sometimes a new short-term result. But the pattern often repeats. Initial progress followed by slowdown, because the underlying system hasn't changed. Only the method has. Others focus on habits. Better sleep. More water. Stress reduction. These are important. They support the system. But even these can feel insufficient when the body is already less responsive. So over time, people go through multiple layers of effort. Diet changes, exercise routines, tracking systems, habit improvements. And at each stage the same question starts to come up. Why isn't this working anymore? That's the turning point. Because it shifts the focus from behavior to structure. From what you're doing to how your body is responding. And this is where supplements usually enter the conversation, not as the first solution, but as something people consider after trying to fix the problem through effort alone. They're looking for support. Something that helps the system respond better. Not necessarily something that replaces what they're doing, but something that makes it more effective. And that brings us to the key insight. The real reason people turn to supplements is not because they haven't tried enough, it's because their body has adapted to everything they've already tried. That's the difference. That it's not a lack of effort, that it's a change in responsiveness. When the body becomes less responsive, adding more effort doesn't always help. Sometimes it makes things harder, because the system is already under pressure. So the more useful question becomes, how do you support the system itself? How do you improve how your body processes energy, regulates hunger, and responds to change? That's where a more structural approach begins. And in that context, supplements are not the foundation, they're one piece of a larger system. A system that includes consistent input, balanced energy, and proper recovery. When those elements are in place, support tools can make a difference. But without that foundation, they tend to have limited impact. That's why understanding the sequence matters. Because it shows that the problem is not about finding the next thing to try, it's about understanding why previous efforts stopped working. and adjusting from there. That shift from doing more to understanding more is what changes the process. It reduces frustration. It creates clarity, and it makes future decisions more effective. If you want to explore this in a more structured way, there's a breakdown in the description that connects these stages to how your body adapts over time and what to look for before adding new variables. And if you want more content that explains the structure behind weight, metabolism, and long-term results, consider subscribing.